How did the largest independent broker-dealer and top custodian in the United States shift strategy to find explosive growth?
We move very quickly to be able to decide, is something working? Is it not? Pull the plug, do testing the way that you would in an entrepreneurial, almost startup-like environment. But what's cool is you get to do that with the resources of a Fortune 400 company behind you.
And how does a 30-plus-year-old financial holdings firm serving over $1.6 trillion in assets become the leader in the advisor-mediated marketplace?
Our advisor value proposition has become so differentiated in the marketplace because we've really proven our ability to make our advisors' life easier and to help them succeed in a really differentiated way, especially versus our competitors.
On this episode of Growth Leaders of Wealth Management, I'm talking to LPL Financial Holdings Head of Corporate Strategy, Marc Cohen, Business and Wealth Solutions Managing Director, Aneri Jambusaria, Head of Field Management, Vincent, and LPL Investment Advisor Representative Phillip Bell, a certified financial planner professional. To learn how building out an impressive breadth of service models and solutions for client success.
We are a clearing firm, a custodian, a broker-dealer, an RIA, a technology provider, a services provider, etc.
Can create incredible opportunities for growth.
We can have all the tools in the world, and if you're not tied in with your teams, if you're not tied in with those advisors, you're not going to be able to achieve the success we have.
Join me as we dive into LPL's strategy of horizontal expansion and vertical integration to create the most robust slate of offerings for the roughly 300,000 financial advisors across channels that exist in the U.S. today. That's right now on Growth Leaders of Wealth Management. All right, everyone, I want to start by acknowledging that this episode of Growth Leaders is different from others in a few ways. First, LPL is a massive Fortune 400 business. As reported in their third quarter 2024 earnings, LPL oversees over $1.6 trillion in assets and serves over 23,000 advisors. This is the first and only interview I've conducted with employees at a publicly traded company. Second, this is the only episode of Growth Leaders when I am not interviewing the founder of the business. You all know that I have a passion and a sense of camaraderie with fellow founders and entrepreneurs. In this episode, I'm not speaking with Private Ledger founder Bob Britzman or purchaser of Linsco, Todd Robinson, but rather speaking with three LPL executives who are currently overseeing key parts of LPL's growth strategy. Third, and finally, from the time I interviewed my podcast guests in July 2024 and when this episode will air in November 2024, there has been a significant shift at LPL. On October 1st, 2024, former president and CEO Dan Arnold was terminated by the board. As of the date of this recording, Rich Steinmeier, formerly Managing Director, Chief Growth Officer at LPL, has been named the new CEO of LPL Financial Holdings, Inc. Because I recorded these interviews prior to the shift in the executive seat, you will hear my podcast guests reference former CEO Dan Arnold. As the industry watches LPL with great curiosity and anticipation, this podcast episode will preserve a unique moment in time and serve as a placeholder for what will come next. I chose to highlight LPL on Growth Leaders of Wealth Management because their growth, it's just undeniable. From an outsider's perspective, it feels like they have a relentless pursuit of innovation, and I'm a firm believer that we should seek learnings from all different types of businesses. Side note, this is also the first and hopefully last podcast episode that I've ever had to record after a week with laryngitis and absolutely no voice, so thank you for bearing with me. All right, now that we've level set, let's dive in. In preparation for this podcast, I went deep down the rabbit hole of LPL's investor presentations. From my perspective, looking at key business metrics from LPL's investor reports, growth in assets and advisors served was fairly predictable leading up to about 2019-2020. And since then, it's been an absolute rocket ship. At the end of 2018, LPL's assets sat at $628 billion with roughly over 16,000 financial advisors served. And as I said earlier in this podcast from LPL's Q3 2024 earnings report, LPL now oversees $1.6 trillion in assets and serves over 23,000 advisors. That is a 245% increase in assets from a 43% growth in the number of advisors served between 2018 to the middle of 2024. In pouring through the investor material, I first noticed the mention of a horizontal expansion strategy and a vertical integration strategy in LPL's 2020 investor presentation. I asked my friend Marc Cohen, head of corporate strategy who joined LPL in 2018, what he has seen over the last several years as key to LPL's growth.
LPL was founded in 1989. If you think about the almost 30 years leading up to that point, we were very singularly focused on how do we get as many advisors as possible to independence. And we were solving for two things. We were trying to solve for how do we put meaningful, personalized advice in the hands of every American who looks for it. And number two, we're looking for how do we reward those financial advisors in a way that others aren't economically. And so think about that as high payouts, low fees. What it also means, quite candidly, is low overhead in terms of the relationship that we're supporting them with. And so we tended to be fairly hands-off in the way that we were engaging with those advisors, instead prioritizing their income, or think of that almost like their gross profit prior to their local level expenses and how they ran their business, but minimizing the expense that they had to LPL. When Dan and the team in 2017 started asking a different question of, not only how do we get advisors to independence, we've done that fairly well up to this point, but more so, how do we actually help them be successful in running a thriving business in independence? What we started to identify, and I know, Meg, you and I have talked about this, we've seen this over the years as well, the profile of the advisor who was going independent has shifted many times, but we were in a spot where the leap to independence for advisors was just probably too great for them to be able to continue to deliver the experience they expect to their clients while also running meaningful independent operating businesses. And so we started to look at it and say, how do we do this better? And that's really the first question that was asked. Then how do we take those principles and start to expand out the addressable market? And I think as you started to look at where that ended up going to, the strategy itself didn't necessarily pivot in 2020 that you were referring to. I'd say more the articulation of that strategy became a bit more crisp around that time, where it became really clear to us, and we started to share more full-throatedly to the marketplace, that our focus has been on serving advisors throughout their life cycle in a way that they can benefit from horizontal expansion of LPL's addressable market. Think of that through the lens of unprecedented flexibility is the way we think about that and how they could partner with LPL. And then benefiting from the vertical integration that we are uniquely positioned to deliver, where we allow for them to have a fully integrated, succinct offering from LPL. They can craft it in many ways with that flexibility into what means most to them and to their needs, but where they've got a single provider, a single partner who's able to show up not only with the back office stuff like custody and clearing, broker-dealer services, RIA compliance, but also with some of these new services we began to introduce, such as helping them run their business with outsourced CFOs or administrative assistants or marketing support, or on the other side, helping them deliver great advice to their clients with things like tax planning or paraplanning support, or expanding out their insurance offerings in ways that they hadn't otherwise contemplated and probably weren't in a spot to go back to school to learn.
One of the other strategic business decisions made by the LPL executive team in 2020 was bringing on Business and Wealth Solutions Managing Director Aneri Jambusaria. I asked Aneri what progress she has seen in the company in the last 4 years that have contributed to LPL's success.
Yeah, 2020 LPL was a pretty different company. And let me actually first start with some of the things that haven't changed. So I think to me, it was really clear back then that LPL had great fundamentals to be a growth company. As you may have heard, our CEO is a former entrepreneur. This whole entrepreneurial approach to wealth management had become the fabric of who we are and what we do. And we had this really amazing culture that was focused on learning from our advisors and innovating new services to solve their needs. So that was was pretty clear from the get-go, and frankly is one of the main reasons why I decided to join LPL back in 2020. That being said, I think from our advisors' perspective, I think they probably saw us in a different light. We were oftentimes viewed alongside the other independent broker dealers in this space. And if I'm being honest, we didn't have a ton that differentiated us in our offering. We had just started to roll out some of those capabilities, but they hadn't really taken shape the way that they have now. To fast forward to today, our advisor value proposition has become so differentiated in the marketplace because we've really proven our ability to make our advisors' life easier and to help them succeed in a really differentiated way, especially versus our competitors. And because of that, we're being viewed in a different light, right? Amongst a wider set of firms, including wirehouses and regionals, and just viewed as a bigger player within the wealth management space. And I think, probably one of the big things that drove our success, is that we had small successes that we were then able to grow and catapult into larger and larger successes, right? So we started small, but then it kind of over time we learned and it really built our confidence to tackle bigger and bigger challenges, which is kind of what brought us to where we are today.
Today, LPL at a high level has a two-pronged strategy for growth: vertical integration and horizontal expansion. Here's Marc with a breakdown of what both of those things mean.
Our concept of horizontal expansion goes back to how do we horizontally expand to better serve more of the wealth market? You could think of that as going back to that initial addressable market of about $4 trillion and figuring out how do we expand that out to the 32 trillion where we are today. The way we've done that is by providing unprecedented flexibility in how advisors can tap into our capabilities and solutions with new affiliation models, expanded services that allows them to be able to leverage all that LPL has to offer to be able to build their perfect practice in a way that makes most sense for where they are in their journey.
Wonderful. And so then that's the horizontal expansion strategy. What is the vertical expansion strategy?
So when we think, Meg, about vertical integration, that's the concept of how do we leverage the unique positioning of LPL, where we are a clearing firm, a custodian, a broker-dealer, an RIA, a technology provider, a services provider, et cetera, to be able to provide more value to our clients in a really interesting and integrated fashion, where they have one partner that they can come to be able to rely upon. They get the efficiencies from a cost standpoint of us being able to integrate that together and leverage our consistent operations behind the scenes to deliver upon that. They get the efficiency within their own business of being able to not have to worry about managing all different vendor relationships, et cetera. And that ends up being in a spot where we can then better serve them because we understand their business well and we can show up in a really interesting way, leveraging that integrated solution.
In essence, by owning each point of service an advisor might need, they are able to serve advisors with businesses across many different entry points and life cycles. This two-pronged approach is supported by LPL's entrepreneurial culture. They move fast, pivot strategy, and always seek feedback. Here's Aneri again on what stood out to her as she turned her focus toward innovating business solutions at LPL.
I started off at LPL to leading strategy for the firm. And this was a pretty familiar space for me. I had a similar role at Fidelity, which is where I had come from. And part of why I decided to join LPL and specifically to drive strategy is because I saw a pretty cool opportunity here for LPL. Fidelity also is a leader in wealth management, but they have a different model, right? It's a more centrally driven approach to wealth management. And I really saw an opportunity for a firm like LPL to take that more entrepreneurial approach and offer a more advisor-led model to wealth management, but one that also takes advantage of scale and growth to be able to help solve for their needs in a more personalized way. And so that was part of my driver of kind of coming to LPL. And a lot of what I spent my time on in strategy was around how we were going to build this differentiated model of the future for wealth management. And one of the big things we were talking about around then when I joined, which at the time was just this small experiment, we had these 3 services that we had just started to offer, this thing called business solutions. So the idea was, a lot of folks talk about helping advisors to deliver great advice, but especially in the independent model, they are also small business owners, right? They're also entrepreneurs that are managing small teams, that are running small businesses all across the country. And we could do more to help them to be an even better business leader. And specifically, our thought here is, let's do more than just provide best practices or ideas or perspective. Let's also take things off of their plate. And I got really interested in this concept because it was so unique. No one else in the industry was doing this. And even if you think about, there's a lot of firms that focus on small businesses, but they don't always have the expertise around wealth management. There's a lot of things that are unique about operating a wealth business, right? That we feel that we have a better position to solve for those needs. And so, within 12 to 18 months, I moved into a role where I was working more with services and with our business solutions. And in that time, we went from 3 services to 14 services today. We're going to have 20 by the end of the year. So it's been a big area of investment for the firm because we see such an opportunity to help our clients grow through services. And then more recently, I've taken on an even broader role, running all of our specialized offerings that drive our clients' success across business and wealth solutions. And the way to think about it is I now lead all of our services to deliver great advice and run a thriving business. And it's been a pretty cool journey over the past few years to just be able to create businesses and offerings from scratch, to be innovative, listening to and learning from our clients, and being able to build something pretty cool and differentiated in the marketplace.
With such an ambitious approach to expanding offerings for their clients, I was curious how Aneri and her colleagues were able to prioritize and vet their new products. How do you continue to drive swift innovation without sacrificing the experience of your existing services?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, all of our offerings start first and foremost with our advisors and institutions who affiliate with LPL. We are constantly listening and learning about what keeps them up at night, where their biggest opportunities are, as well as just doing our own analysis on looking at what drives the most successful advisors and institutions that work with LPL. We have great data about them, so we have a good perspective on what the important things are. And then coming out of that, we have a set of, we call them jobs to be done for an advisor that we are constantly looking at and evaluating. And over time, our goal is to attack as many of these jobs to be done as we can, where we feel like we can really effectively deliver a great value, take work off of our clients' plate, and operationalize it well to deliver a great experience. And of course, do so at a great value and a good price. So we have a pretty good rubric around how we evaluate those opportunities, and we're kind of tackling them off one by one. And then we also have a pretty well-defined incubation process. We typically have 2 stages of pilots that we do, which really allows us to be able to test and learn in market, and also to be able to test both the experience and the value, but also, things like pricing and growth and impact and things like that, all the way leading up to a full-scale launch. This is something that, if I'm being honest, a few years ago was pretty was a little bit more vague. And I think over time, we've been able to learn our way into what works and what doesn't work to create a more intentional innovation process.
That's so cool. So all of the new services that you launch go through a 2-stage incubation process. What does that look like?
Yeah. So once we've gone through discovery and we've met the initial lenses, right? We feel like this is a desirable service. People are going to want it. It's viable, right? We think we can run it in a cost-effective way. And third, it's viable. So it's efficient, right? So desirability, viability, and feasibility are kind of the 3 key things that we look at. Once we do that, there's 2 key pilots that we do. The first one that we typically do is we call it alpha pilot. Think about that as generally one where we're working directly with advisors or institutions, but more often than not, we're not charging them for anything, right? We're really delivering a service. We're seeing what they like, what they don't like, and they're offering us the value of their time and perspective, right? So we can kind of test and learn. The goal after the alpha pilot is to just build additional conviction around specifically the desirability and feasibility aspects of it, right? We want to prove that, hey, we can build something that advisors want and also something that we can operationalize in an effective way. At that point, we then switched to a beta pilot, which oftentimes adds in maybe some additional advisors. Maybe we grow from 10 advisors to 25 advisors by that point in the pilot. And we typically start charging a fee associated with our services because we want to make sure that we can offer these services at a competitive price that's delivering the right level of value. And that also allows us to do the next level of honing in specifically around the unit economics and the way that the service is operating to make sure that we have the right like operating model in place. So those are typically the two stages that we go into. At that point, we prepare ourselves for a full launch. And the launch process, again, also has quite a bit of learning attached to it, right? It's happened many times when we built an offering, went through all the pilots, we thought we knew who the target customer was. And then guess what? We bring it to market and we learn that actually we were wrong. And maybe there's a different type of target client. Sometimes this happens 6 months, a year after launch. We uncover there's a totally different type of client who's interested in this solution. So it's really a continuous learning process.
When leaders are constantly driving for new ways to serve their customers and pushing boundaries, it is inevitable that something may not work the way they envisioned. I asked Aneri about some of their moments when they just had to pivot.
One of the earlier services that we had launched a couple of years ago is called paraplanning services. And the idea is to provide an advisor with a financial planning support resource. And one of the things that, again, I don't think we quite appreciated until we launched the service is during our pilot, we had a number of advisors who were really interested in being part of a pilot, right? They were eager and we were excited to partner with them. What we didn't notice at the time, but we learned later, is that were on higher on the sophistication level in terms of their understanding and appreciation for how to incorporate financial planning into their practice. And so they were kind of already planners for the most part and just needed to have an additional leverage point to be able to do planning the way that they wanted to do planning, right? Part of what we learned after we launched the offering is that, yeah, there's definitely more of those folks who like are running a planning-based practice and want a leverage point, but there were way more folks who were just getting started on their planning journey. And our service wasn't designed for it. We didn't make it easy for someone to get started with planning. And so we went back to the drawing board. We created a better experience for those that are new to planning in terms of helping them get set up with a planning tool, helping them figure out like a low friction way to get started where they didn't have to make a big financial commitment to the service, right? So we tweaked these little things about the offering, and now fast forward, it's one of our most successful offerings. We have over 500 advisors in the program. It's also one of those offerings that is most effective in driving advisor growth. We're seeing it kind of quarter after quarter in terms of that impact we all know that financial planning can have. So it was a really great learning for us in terms of just being thoughtful about maybe selection bias in terms of who's participating in your pilot and just making sure that you have as diverse as possible of a customer base that you're learning from in that process.
Aneri just talked through how LPL is approaching its vertical integration strategy to much success. Vertical integration is a key part of LPL's recent growth. And there is more. As we heard from Marc earlier, another part of LPL's strategy is horizontal expansion, which essentially means that LPL is consistently focused on expanding the addressable market of the types of advisors and institutions they are capable of serving. Peter Vincent is the head of field management, meaning his team is dedicated to fostering their clients' growth, seeking their feedback, and leading the rollout of new supported models. I asked Peter to walk me through what a supported model looks like at LPL.
So for me, supported model means you've got our basic core model, which an advisor is really running all the elements of the business by themselves. And then you've got a model that's supported by my team where we are helping you in various ways. So it's everything from helping you organize your team, helping to manage your staff, and the spectrum is pretty wide. So we have our W-2 model, which is Linsco. That is max support, and everybody works for us, although it's still independent at its heart. And then we've got more of a supported independent network, which is a group of services that you get in addition to the core capabilities. And again, you get our team, and we're partnering with you to help deliver on that value and help you run that business that you want to run.
As I mentioned at the top of the episode, LPL's assets have grown by 245% since 2018, and the number of advisors served has grown by 43% in that same period of time. This really proves Aneri's point that LPL has really cracked the code in helping advisors grow with targeted services and solutions. LPL is getting a lot more production out of their advisors. Because LPL's offerings are driven by client request, I was curious what Peter saw their advisors asking for the most when it came to driving growth for their businesses. Here's Peter on the themes he's been hearing.
I'd say advisors are very focused on growth. And I think what's cool about that is I hear it from our advisors. I talk to peers in the marketplace that are also focused on growth. And so it puts you in a really good spot. Like a coalition of willing is much better than trying to roll a rock that doesn't want to be rolled. So that's the good starting point. And I think that creates a nice forum to be able to engage. And I think the other thing that we have that's a bit of an advantage is because of our model, because even in the employee model, it's independent at heart. Our advisors know that our job is to support them in running the businesses that they envision, not carrying our own agenda. And that also puts us in a really good spot. And, as it relates to growth, every advisor's, they're in a different place in the spectrum. It's not one size fits all. And I think that part of what we do with our routines is we have a very structured approach in engaging with advisors to get them into a planning process, anchor on things that are important to them from a business perspective, and then bring in a capability set that allows them to get to the right place. So, whether it's the supported independent model where we have support with 1099s or our W-2 model, we're doing the same things. And our job is to get close to advisors so that we have the right dialogue at the right time and we can unlock the right support to get them where they want to go.
This relationship with their advisors and dedication to training and support is one of the major aspects that sets LPL apart from anyone else in their field. After the break, you'll hear more from Peter on some of the programs that LPL has implemented and how they are preparing their next generation of advisors. We'll also hear from Phillip Bell, an advisor and a client of LPL, to hear what it's like to utilize these services in his business. Plus, we'll hear from Marc and Aneri on what they see for the future of LPL. That is all coming up right after this quick break. Pod Pony is the all-in-one podcast partner for thought leaders and business owners. They provide everything you need for your podcast, including audio and video engineering, graphic design, podcast social media support, on-site filming, and more. From initial concepts and strategies to production and distribution, the experts at Pod Pony are with you every step of the way. Learn more about Pod Pony by visiting podpony.com and start your podcast journey today. Now let's get back to the show. I am so honored by the reception of the first 10 episodes of Growth Leaders of Wealth Management and excited that we still have 2 more to go. Our final episode of season 1 airs on December 16th. But have no fear, we have more incredible content coming your way in January with FICOM's award-winning podcast, The New School, which is hosted by my extraordinary colleague, Candace Carlton. And I will be back for season 2 of Growth Leaders of Wealth Management next summer. In the meantime, I need your help. Who do you want to hear from next season? Do you know of any amazing founder-led businesses in growth mode? We'll have a form in today's show notes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube that you can nominate the next set of remarkable guests for season 2. I can't wait to see what's in store. Now back to the show. Before the break, you heard from Peter Vincent on some of the frameworks he and his team have been using to encourage growth in the advisor's LPL services. I was curious how closely his team keeps up with the sheer number of advisors they serve. How often are they really sitting down together to discuss what they need in their individual businesses?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's definitely not one and done. One and done we know does not work. So, for us, we've developed a pretty comprehensive set of tools to put our advisors in the best position with our care. And so the process for us starts with business planning. We've got a digital tool set that every year we'll sit down with advisors and we'll take them through that process. And that allows us to really identify opportunities for growth within their practices, be able to align on what we're going to focus on. That alignment's critical, and then set objectives and goals. And then from there, as I mentioned, it's a journey and they're all at a different place. So we take a customized approach to say, these are the 3 things we're going to work on. We've all agreed on this, and we're going to bring in the right tools and resources. So for us, first of all of our branch leaders, they're trained practice coaches. We actually deployed a series of training that we developed earlier this year that everybody on our team goes through it so that they're equipped to be able to coach and guide advisors. And then we developed a playbook, which is modularly based, that allows us to identify development opportunities and marry them against the modules. So that's one of the ways that we get advisors developed in a more customized way. But we're also using third-party partners that focus on things like book composition, like Pareto, as well as Altius for new client acquisition. And we've developed our own internal programs as well. Next-gen development's important. Advisors are aging rapidly, and they're starting to exit the business. And what we found is the next gens, while they're great at servicing clients, they're not great at growth. And so we built a whole program based on getting them to be able to step out of just maintenance and get them into a growth mode to get those big practices back on track. And so, but it's not just one and done in those programs. Like, we have monthly routines with all our advisors. We're the accountability partner, and we're accountable to making sure that they get where they want to go. And so those routines are in place to keep it fresh, to keep it top of mind. And then when we get to the next year, it's rinse and repeat, pick some new focus areas, and then continue to advance with the practice.
An integrated, intensive approach to support for their advisors is no small task, especially when they have an advisor client base of over 23,000. I couldn't help but wonder how they manage that approach consistently. How big of a team is needed to provide that support?
We're national, and I would say that we are the fastest growing team at LPL because, first, our Linsco W-2 model is taken off. We've got 60 offices around the country now.
Wow.
We've got the supported independent model that continues to grow. From a leadership team perspective, probably have around 70 folks that are either in branches working with advisors or supporting those folks that are working with advisors. We call them growth managers.
Okay.
So, there's the branch managers that are accountable for the advisors and the support of the advisors in office. And then you've got the folks that support them that help with kind of the pointers, getting the programs together, enabling efficiency so that we can operate at a higher rate.
One of the big areas that Peter and his team seek to address with their trainings is the next generation of talent. A theme I hear frequently in the RIA space is the fear from founders that the next generation isn't bringing in business the same way that they do. I asked Peter how his team was enabling the next generation to move from maintenance role to accelerator of growth.
We hear the same things from advisors. Look, they're proud of what they've done. They've built fantastic businesses, but I think sometimes they forget that when they were building it and they were running out of capacity, they were bringing in complementary pieces. They wanted to bring in folks that could help with the existing base so that they can keep making rain, because that's what they're great at.
Right.
And so then when they go to exit, they look back and they're like, well, why can't you do what I was doing? It's like, well, I was brought in to do something else, and I didn't develop those muscles. And so I think that's a part of it. We do a couple things. So we built an assessment for the next gen, and our leadership team profiles and the senior partner profiles. And then we sit down with the senior partner and we discuss, because there's generally not alignment. Like, we tend to have a little bit more, at times, favorable view, and sometimes maybe not, but it allows us to kind of align on what needs to get done from a development perspective, which is really healthy. And then, as I mentioned, that next gen program is one of the things that we've done to bring that cohort together, because in a lot of ways they're similar. They look the same. They're more similar in demographic ages. They've got similar gaps in terms of their capabilities. But just like we do with any advisor, we think about what do they need and customize it. So, I talk a lot about the Altius program, which I like a lot. It's a 100-day program that focuses on new client acquisition. We've sent a number of our next gens to that, and they've come out better equipped to know, like, how do I get new business? With big books of business, it's not really picking up the phone and calling random people, right? It's more around working the book of business, showing up in the right way, and getting comfortable asking for introductions, right? Which is hard if you've never been taught. But once they get taught, they get comfortable, they start to do it. And so again, with the next gen, just like a more senior advisor, we're looking at them, we're profiling them, we're assessing, and the senior partner is we align on where we want to focus on development, and then we do the same things we would do with any other advisor.
Of course, it's not just the next gen that needs support and development. LPL has rolled out a playbook to meet their clients at every stage.
I think that the playbook we built, I'm really proud of. We spent a lot of time on it. We spent a lot of money on it. It took us about a year to get it in place. And now we're starting to use it very actively with our advisors. And right now it's us coaching, kind of going through that business profile, aligning on modules. For a new advisor, you might go through every module. For a more experienced advisor that's focused and struggling with like book composition, you might center on segmentation. And so that's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of, and it's one of the things we're using more heavily. And we're also putting in place a number of other programs. For example, I am sitting here in San Diego because our Focus Conference starts on Sunday, and it starts on Sunday night, but Sunday morning, I've got 25 advisors that are joining us for a coaching session that's going to be 6 hours. We've got 25 advisors, and 2 of our branch managers are the ones that are delivering that. And a year ago, we had a third party doing that. And so we're also equipping ourselves to be able to do more in market with advisors and preparing ourselves along the way. And I think that's one of the things that's going to give us, I think, a lot of lift is being able to insource some of that stuff, personalize it, make sure it's being delivered with, within the constructs of our LPL culture, which is, candidly different than a lot of other places.
With everything they are doing, how does Peter and his field team measure success? How do you see coaching turn into business growth?
What I would say is, first, everybody on my team is highly competitive. Now, we do believe we need to build things that everybody in the firm can use, but we would like to have the highest score. And so, we're focused on same-store sales. And for us, that number, which right now for our Linsco population is a little over 6%, is something we're really proud of. And what we're looking at is how do we get that same success in every one of the supported models? So that's the benchmark that we're using. And we're getting our advisors aligned against it. I was with a big team out in Newport earlier this week, and we were talking about they're massive, but how do we get to that? Like, what's the path to 6% on a same-store basis versus where they were today? And so that's, I think, one of the things that we're going to continue to be proud of and focused on. But it's not just about one number. It's about the levers that you pull to get to that number. So, if you listen to Aneri talk about LPL services, all those things are aligned specifically against key levers that drive growth, like paraplanning. We all know, anybody that's been in this business long enough knows that planning is essential. It's an essential ingredient to growth. And so we pay a lot of attention to our power planners and how much success they're having. And that group, by the way, has grown by 13% versus 6%. And so we look at that and we harness that in our development of other teams, and also our utilization of things like paraplanning, which is an LPL service where a team, even a Linsco wrapper, could tap into that to get additional capacity when they need it to continue to accelerate around that path. And I think that's one of the things that makes us unique, in that we give a lot of services in a supported model like our W2 Linsco model, but we still give access to some of these other things that folks can tap into to get capacity in a more cost-efficient way.
For those of you who may be less familiar with the terminology LPL uses, so was I, store sales means organic growth. 6% year over year organic growth for their advisors using their services is huge when you consistently extrapolate that growth across 23,000 plus advisors. And I have a feeling it's just the beginning. One other approach that LPL is newly investing in is building out communities from within their current client base to share knowledge. Here's Peter on how LPL is supporting client peer learning.
It's really important. And we have a variety of different communities. And one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to blend those communities across different supported channels. So, while we have a Linsco community, and they, like some of them call themselves, I'm Linsco recruited. We all came in through recruits, and it's interesting because we haven't been around that long, but we literally have numbers. And some of the early teams are like, hey, I'm team 4. And they still talk about that, and they have that to anchor to. And then we have Linsco that came through Liquidity and Capital, where we buy the business and they flop over from independent to employee, and they call themselves, Linsco Liquidity and Capital. But then within there, we have, strong female advisors, and we create, that forum, and we have a national conference that brings them together. And we do community gatherings outside of that national conference. We've got folks that are more exclusively focusing on retirement planning, where they're playing the role as a 321 or a 338. And we've got big businesses that sit across all these different communities. We bring them together and they can learn. And then I think the other important thing, and this is important for us, is we create these one-off connections, because advisors, they want to learn from each other, as you mentioned, but their businesses are often different. So if you have an advisor, and we have some really powerful ones that have massive businesses that are focused more on middle America, they like serving the $5 to $2 million households, and they do it efficiently, then you certainly don't want to connect somebody who's exclusively focused on ultra high net worth with that person, because they're not going to have anything in common.
Right.
So I think the other thing that we leverage is our deep understanding of these teams to put folks together. And again, when we talk about peer share, focus is happening. 10,000 of your closest friends here in San Diego, come see it. And what you're going to find is we do a bunch of peer share sessions at Focus with breakouts. Folks talking about how we brand. Folks talk about how you run a high net worth practice. Folks talking about how do you work with CIOs and start to really accelerate growth with either legal experts or CPAs. And so the communities that we build are really important. Part of the community is the model you sit in. Part of the community is where you sit geographically. And part of the community work that we do is around getting people together that have similar interests, similar demographics, and also similar business types.
So far, we've heard from some of the leadership at LPL about the ways they serve their client base, but I was particularly excited to sit down with one of their advisors, Phillip Bell. I wanted to know what it was like firsthand for an advisor to go through the process of working with LPL. Phillip is passionate and dedicated to growth. I asked him what he saw as the secrets to his firm's success.
There's 4 things I've thought of that really have made a difference in our firm. The first is that God has blessed our firm, blessed our efforts, blessed us to make some good decisions along the way. I've got a couple other partners here, and partnerships don't normally last, and we've been blessed that we still are able to get along, pull the same direction, and it has produced some really good results. That's number one. Second is we have hired and trained new advisors into our practice. Meg, there is an ocean of opportunity that's all around us. It's massive. LPL gave us a figure a couple weeks ago at conference that there's 12 trillion of new assets in motion to move into this industry. No one's keeping their hands out to welcome and to accept that growth, to position. All I do is just hold the door open. It feels like, come on in. We got folks to help you. So we've hired and trained a lot of new advisors into the industry. Most of them were brand new.
Okay.
Several didn't even know what a mutual fund or an ETF was. But they could work hard. They had good work ethic. They had good people skills, and now they're just shooting stars. So second thing is we've hired and trained some new advisors. Third, I've hired an outside of the industry business coach to help with all of those decisions on how to run a business. We're trained for asset allocation. We're trained to minimize taxes. We're trained to make sales, to work with clients, to build great financial plans. But we're not trained to run businesses. Well, someone's got to hire. Someone's got to fire. Someone's got to set goals for the company. Someone's got to set metrics to keep each person accountable, and to set the smaller size goals and plans for the business. Well, that is true for every business, not just this business. So I specifically hired someone outside the industry to just give me good business training. So that was third. And the fourth, I've partnered with the great company LPL and used their resources to help invest in my business.
While not everyone will attribute divine intervention to their success, the themes of passion for training, dedication to customer service, and leveraging wise partnerships seem to be universal for Phillip, for LPL, and for many of the growth leaders we've spoken with on this podcast. I asked Phillip what marketing initiatives he's taken to set his team apart.
First of all, make sure you're focusing on providing good customer service. Since COVID, customer service has just taken a nosedive on every industry. Think about paying your water bill, paying your phone bill, doing any type of activity. It's just become lousy. It's all been pushed online. Well, who's our clients? Most of our clients are those baby boomer plus clients. They've got all the money. They don't want to hear press 1 for English when they call to, request a check. So, some of providing great growth is just doing a really good job on the very basic elements of running a business. Answer the phone, call people back, return people's emails, just provide good customer service. And in an industry that's now very poor at doing that, call your bank and try to talk to a knowledgeable person to handle an issue. Just be good at just plain simple things and tell their friends. So I'd say that's first. Second is I'm not necessarily the promoter of my business. My clients are the promoter of my business. So if I treat them very well, they're going to tell a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, a family member. That conversation inevitably is going to come up. Who do you use? What are you doing? I'm upset because of this area, or I'm just looking. Hey, call my guy. So the net is not, just you on the phone. The net is your network of existing clients that you have. So give them the tools, remind them that you're looking, you're open for business. You'll take really good care of their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers. But third, you have to create situations where they can refer. So keep plenty of events. Most everyone does a Social Security type of event, a tax planning type of event, some type of client appreciation. Keep those on a regular schedule so that when someone has a referral, your client already has the ability to say, hey, I'm going to go to the baseball game. I'm going to go to the taco event or whatever it is. Come with me. You can meet these people. If you like them, fine. If not, fine. But there's always easy ways for them to introduce to your firm. So we can have a huge book of events, and we have something going every event or every month, an event going every month. And inevitably, there's 1 to 10 prospects that will be there that just creates a continual system of new folks coming in.
When working with LPL, Phillip in particular is aligned with their dedication to building up the next generation of talent. Here he is talking about some of LPL's services he's used to great success.
LPL, I think, has seen a lot of the same things that I am seeing, that we need help with new advisors. We need development of businesses to be able to create a smooth business platform. When your business runs smooth and consistently, you can get a lot done. And so they have helped in a number of different ways, but a couple of them really stood out. One is their Advisor Institute. So it's a program that lasts for a year that's designed to take new people to the industry, educate them on finance, get them licensed, and then get them some sort of a designation, but train them so that they're ready to see clients. And just as importantly, they're ready to take on clients that you need to hand off. It's a growing business. It's a growing industry. There's smaller size clients that you need to hand off so you can make room for larger ones. And that has worked really, really well so that they get trained as fast as possible. It amazes me how much time that it takes to really get someone trained in this industry, because there's so many facets to it with tax planning and asset planning and allocation. But they've done a good job to get those people up and trained so they're ready to go to work. So I've used that program many times, and that has been very, very helpful.
Phillip stands out from many leaders at RIAs for his investment in training next generation talent. I was curious why it was a passion of his when it seems less common in our industry.
It takes some time, to take some dedication, and there's a risk. And it doesn't always work out when you hire someone that they'll stick it out, that they'll be able to pass all of their exams. So, there's a risk. You've got the time and the money into it, and that person doesn't work out. And yeah, that's why there's not a lot of new people hired in, especially for a small office, because it's a big commitment. I would counter that the risk is well worth it. It's an investment. There's lots and lots of big firms out there that are trying to sell us everything, because revenue right now is running pretty rich right now. So you want to pay for all types of different services and whatnot, and you can just get nickel and dime to death. Well, that's an investment, but here is a really good investment into hiring, training a new person that will pay off many times over. So, and it pays off in several ways. One is that eventually you have more time in your day to do those things that need to be done if you got someone else to just help with the client questions, client appointments. That helps tremendously. It opens the door for you to really grow then, if you've got some help on the backside to see and take care of your current clients who you care about, you really love and want to watch over. The third, also, it grows the value of your practice. If you have strong growth rate, if you have more folks in the office, and of course larger client base, can't take your eye off the ball of how much your practice is worth by reinvesting back into it. So for an investment that'll give you, fantastic return, it's one that I think is just very overlooked. We are in the people business, and we need to be investing in people. And there's so many folks that want to get into this business that have been burned by a previous experience. You just hold their hand, give them some good help and good direction. You're helping them to step into a wonderful career, a wonderful opportunity to really help people and make a difference in their lives and their children's lives and their grandkids' lives. It's fantastic.
In addition to training up the next generation of advisors, Phillip has used LPL service to do what's called a partial book sale. In essence, when you have a few clients that no longer fit what your business is doing, you can sell them to LPL so they can match those clients with a better fit advisor. You may remember that the concept of a partial book sale first came up in episode 1 of Growth Leaders with Facet. Facet's initial business model was built on partial book sales, and it didn't work. Here, Phillip gives a little bit of insight into an advisor's mindset and self-created ceilings, while revealing how partial book sales have allowed him to focus on the bigger picture for growth.
You ever hear the saying, you can't see the forest because of the trees?
Yes.
It's very true. You have to get out of your business to then look down on it once in a while and realize what it looks like and where you want to go. So having that outside business coach that can kind of help you, look, see, and, have others accountable. Hey, you talked about this problem before. Why have you not addressed it yet? It helps to get some outside comments. And most advisors I have found really have a heart for their clients. They really care about them. So if a good advisor does a good job, they create their own ceiling. They gather clients to the point where they just cannot grow past that ceiling, because at some point they just get swallowed up in the service of the business. And generally they can make a really good income and do well there, but they often get frustrated. Why can I not grow to the next level? Why cannot I not focus on those clients that I really want to be a specialist to? And it it becomes a self-entrapment to remain in that area. So it's uncomfortable. With change is always uncomfortable. And the more that you embrace it, you welcome it, then the easier it is to make those big decisions that can have a big impact. But I think most advisors really care about their clients and what they do. It's just hard for them to think about focusing on the business rather than just the clients one by one.
In many ways, it sounds like partnering with LPL has cleared space for Phillip to keep an eye on the bigger picture of his business and invest in the future. Here he is on a few other ways he's utilized LPL's services.
LPL has been good to give me back office support. I've got great technology resources with LPL that work very well. But sometimes I run into an issue that is larger than I'm able to deal with, and I need extra support. LPL has been good to channel that to the right areas so that I get good input, I get a good answer, I get a resolution to that quickly. As we have grown in size, LPL has focused and give us more and more of a specialized team to work with us directly. That way we can resolve an issue and move on. Their technology works really well. If their technology works well, the processes will work smoothly. When things operate smoothly, you can process a lot of business doing the same thing all the time and set yourself up where you can have that accelerated growth. If you're constantly working with very difficult investment products or a new thing all the time, then it's clunky. Staff forget things. They won't remember how they did it last time. It be unusual. But if you kind of do the same thing, same process every day, we use all of our investments are in the fee-based account. So we do everything the same accounts and go through that very, very quickly. That's all within LPL's control, and it moves very, very fast and efficiently. So that's been a big help for us to not have any log jams in front of us that we're constantly battling against.
Turning back now to the future of LPL, I'm sure there's so much more to come. When I spoke with Aneri and Marc about what they were looking forward to in the coming years, they were both excited about maintaining the fast-paced, innovative culture that LPL has cultivated so far. Here's Aneri on some of the specific growth-driving solutions she sees on the horizon.
We have a lot that we're focused on to continue to drive the most successful advisors and institutions in the industry. So as it relates to delivering great advice, we're continuing to be focused on growing our investment platform, growing all of our advisory platforms and the capabilities associated with it, as well as growing our LPL research capabilities that are really critical to helping our advisors to deliver a differentiated value proposition. We're also continuing to invest in what we call comprehensive advice. So think all things financial planning, trust, insurance, banking, and lending. These are all such an important part of our advisors' growth trajectory and some of the services that they want to deliver to their clients. So we're investing pretty heavily in those areas. And then in terms of helping our clients run a thriving business, we want to continue the steady drumbeat that we have around our business solutions and the growth there. And we're going to be attacking some new problem spaces. So right now we're working on some new services in the HR space, for example, of helping our advisors to be great people managers, which again is not always a thing that is maybe top of mind for every advisor day in and day out, but it is a really important part of doing the job, especially as an independent leader. And oftentimes, what we hear is that talent related issues or challenges can be really top of mind for our advisors amidst everything else. And so we're really focused on developing more solutions to help them with those needs.
For Marc, his bird's eye view of the company's future is all about maintaining their dedication to their advisors, just like Phillip.
Our aspiration, our vision as a firm is to allow our clients to be as successful as they can be based on their definition of success. And I think if we were to go out and do that, there's a really big opportunity in the marketplace. And by solving for their needs really across the entire life cycle of their business, while consistently investing back into the platform, it allows us to be able to open up that market. What we do is we're going to provide them unprecedented flexibility in how we can support their business so that they can design their perfect practice. We're going to deliver integrated capabilities, services, and solutions that allow them to run a thriving business while also delivering great advice and a great experience to their clients. We're going to show up to meet them at every stage of their life cycle by bringing forward some of our unique capabilities and unique value through capital solutions to be able to support their growth and maybe even their eventual exit at some point in the future. And I think we believe that if we do all of those things better than anyone else in the market, it's going to create a really compelling outcome for our existing clients, but it's also going to attract many more advisors and institutions who are looking to take their businesses to a different level in their journeys. And I think that's what's going to be really interesting. But when you think about it, that growth that'll come from pursuing those additional advisors and institutions is going to lead to an enhanced capacity to be able to invest back into the platform, which is going to lead to our ability to continue to deliver more and better compelling capabilities and solutions, which ultimately just creates a pretty interesting virtuous cycle for us that we're hoping will be pretty good.
Peter is also a deep believer in the culture fostered by the people at LPL, especially compared to the wirehouses that he and many of his colleagues cut their teeth on at the beginning of their careers.
I worked in a wire my whole life, right? I spent 25 years at Merrill. I spent another 6 at UBS. I was in prison most of it. I got here 5 years ago and I'm like, I didn't know this existed. This is awesome. Like you can actually show up with advisors and like you have fun with them. You help them run the practices. You don't jam them up with a firm agenda. Like you just like, well, what do you want to do with your business? And, you know, let's go get that.
That's so cool.
It's very refreshing. And I think it's, you know, I just ran into an advisor here who's in this same office in San Diego where we just hired him from Merrill. He's been here like 3 weeks. And I actually have been with him before when I was at Merrill. He was like, we were together one time at this thing. I go, yeah. He goes, you built this thing. It's so awesome. It's so great. You're like, you pay us a ton. You're there for us. You're helping us grow. You're going to help my kids who are in the business so I can play more golf. Like, this is awesome. It's just a fun
so lovely.
place to be.
Like so fulfilling, right?
I feel like what we should add to the end of this podcast is, hey, dummies, why aren't you here? Why are you somewhere else? It makes no sense. There's literally only one place to be.
LPL has come a long way in the 30 years since its founding. They have established themselves as a totally unique entity, servicing their advisors as a clearing firm, a custodian, a broker-dealer, an RIA, a technology provider, and so much more. Their breadth of services allows them to create custom solutions for over 23,000 clients nationwide while servicing over $1.6 trillion in assets, with their vision set on continuing to expand horizontally to capture even more of the $32 trillion addressable market they are now built to serve. By fostering deep relationships with their advisors, they are bringing up the next generation of talent and creating communities of advisors to deepen the business acumen across the industry. After my time speaking with Aneri, Marc, Peter, and Phillip at LPL, here are my key takeaways. 1. Never lose the entrepreneurial spirit, even as your firm grows. By moving fast and always pushing for innovation and not being afraid to take a test and learn approach, LPL has been able to dominate the market. They aren't bogged down in bureaucracy and can pivot quickly to learn from their mistakes. 2, put your clients at the center of everything you do. For LPL, they go far beyond helping advisors be better financial advisors and focus on helping them be better small business owners. We heard this from Cody and the team at Advisors Excel Wealth Management too. At LPL, they never lose sight of the core needs of the advisors that they serve. They center all business decisions and services around meeting the advisor where they are with the solutions they need. 3, farm for feedback. Everything LPL does is in the service of the needs of their clients. They are only able to be successful at doing that by regularly taking data, issuing surveys, and building a deep relationship with their advisors. They never take their ear off the ground for what they should be developing next. 4, investing in the next generation of talent is worth the time and cost. It is possible to assess and train new advisors so they can leap from maintaining a firm to driving that next phase of growth. This is a worthwhile investment that will be a part of LPL and their advisors' future legacies. 5, seek differentiation. Years ago, when LPL had trouble differentiating from the other independent broker-dealers in the industry, they realized that they needed to build better differentiation. Their horizontal expansion and vertical integration strategy has yielded incredible differentiation in a short period of time, and the growth has followed. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Thank you for bearing with my voice. I, as always, would love to keep the conversation going in the comments. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on the next episode right when it drops. We'd also love it if you would review and share the podcast on your social channels so that we can continue to grow this amazing community. As I mentioned at the break, we are seeking nominations for guests for Season 2 of Growth Leaders of Wealth Management. The link to submit a nomination is in the show notes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. We cannot wait to see who you nominate, so please get those nominations coming in. As always, for more growth resources, please visit ficompartners.com/insights. Tune in to the next episode when we'll be speaking with the incredible team at Apex FinTech Solutions.